He stood in the living room as if nothing extraordinary had happened. The curtains were half open, letting in a dull afternoon light that made everything look colder than usual. She was still talking, her voice trembling as she tried to build excuses like a fortress around herself. Her eyes avoided his, and every sentence she formed felt unfinished, as if she was terrified of what silence might reveal. The phone in her hand remained unlocked, its screen still displaying the messages she wished she could erase. The evidence lingered between them like a living presence. She believed that her words could control the narrative. She underestimated the man in front of her. He listened without interrupting. Not once did he raise his tone or correct her version of events. The calmness on his face unnerved her more than any accusation. She expected rage. She expected shouting. She expected the shattered glass scene she had seen in movies and feared in real life. Instead, the stillness he carried was sharper than anger. His silence was not weakness. It was a verdict waiting for the right moment. When she finally stopped speaking, the room seemed to inhale. For a long second, nothing moved except her fingers tightening around the phone. Her lips parted, searching for another excuse, another explanation, another lifeline. That was when he spoke. His voice was steady, as if he was announcing a schedule rather than a life-altering decision. He said they needed to finalize the divorce by Friday. The words did not strike like lightning. They sank slowly with the weight of something irreversible. She did not collapse or scream. Her reaction was far more terrifying. She froze. Her pupils widened as if her mind was running through memories, decisions, and consequences all at once. Her lips pressed together so tightly they lost color. For the first time, she understood that he was no longer trying to save the marriage. He was closing a chapter. What unsettled her was not the divorce itself. She had always believed he would beg her to stay. She mistook his patience for dependence. She was convinced he lacked alternatives. Now, the man she dismissed as predictable stood before her with a confidence she had never seen. He was not announcing a breakup. He was initiating a strategy that had already begun long before she noticed the distance growing between them. Her thoughts shifted from shock to fear. She wondered how much he had uncovered. Had he read every message? Had he seen the hotel reservations? Did he know what she said behind his back? She always believed she controlled the tempo of every argument. Yet the stillness in his eyes suggested something different. He was not reacting. He was finished reacting. Her attempts at justification no longer mattered. He had already made a decision long before she realized she had gone too far. The man she believed she could manipulate had evolved into someone she no longer understood. He stood firm, not because he lacked emotion, but because he finally valued his dignity more than her explanations. He had transformed pain into clarity and clarity into action. She tried to speak, but the words refused to form. She attempted to move, but her body remained anchored by the realization that this was no temporary crisis. This was the conclusion of a story she thought she controlled. Her silence made the room heavier than any confrontation could have. He looked at her as one would look at a person who had exhausted every opportunity. At that moment, she understood something devastating. She had not lost him when she cheated. She lost him when she assumed he would wait forever. The man before her was no longer the husband she underestimated. He was someone who had already stepped into his future, with or without her. She thought she had control. She had no idea he was not reacting. He was preparing. Betrayal rarely begins with fireworks. It begins quietly, disguised as curiosity. Her affair did not erupt suddenly. It grew like a vine, winding around a weak spot she never repaired. It started with a co-worker who complimented her perfume during a lunch break. She smiled longer than necessary, and he noticed. A seed was planted, not of passion, but of entitlement. She convinced herself she deserved more attention, more admiration, more excitement, forgetting that her husband had once given her all of these things without conditions. Her phone habits changed before her heart did. Messages that used to be shared openly now arrived at strange hours. She turned her screen away when she typed. She claimed stress at work. She said she needed space. He watched her detach piece by piece. At first he dismissed the change, thinking it was a phase. Yet her tone betrayed her intentions long before her body did. She giggled at her phone as if she were 15 again, oblivious to the responsibilities she vowed to uphold. She believed she was discovering a new chapter of her life. In reality, she was rewriting the man who stood beside her, deleting memories he thought were permanent. Coffee breaks became rituals. She left early for work and returned later, always with a reason. He asked once about her new schedule, and she responded with irritation, insisting he was paranoid. She insisted she was misunderstood. She believed that admitting dissatisfaction was weakness, so she created a fantasy where she was the victim. The other man fed this fantasy. He praised her frustrations. He encouraged her complaints. He positioned himself as her solution while ignoring the mess he created. Her loyalty shifted, not because she fell in love, but because she wanted someone to blame for the emptiness she refused to confront. She once whispered that this man understood her. She forgot understanding requires history. Her husband knew every version of her. He supported her through moments that would have shattered others. Yet even the strongest foundation cannot withstand someone who chooses to abandon it. She exchanged real history for temporary validation. She mistook attention for emotional depth. The other man knew exactly how to manipulate that confusion. He encouraged her to believe that she was special, as though she had discovered something rare. In truth, she was walking into a trap disguised as affection. He noticed the signs long before she realized he was aware. The late-night messages, the sudden desire to dress differently, the new perfume she claimed a colleague recommended. He did not chase explanations. He did not accuse her. He observed. He let her believe her lies were invisible. Trust requires both parties to protect it. She treated it like a disposable accessory. He treated it like a contract she had already broken. Betrayal revealed not who she met, but who she became. Her choices were not impulsive. They were calculated, rehearsed, repeated. The affair was not a moment of weakness. It was the culmination of neglected gratitude, misplaced desires, and a hunger for attention she could not admit out loud. She built a secret life brick by brick, confident that he would never notice. She did not expect him to understand the patterns. She assumed his silence meant ignorance. She forgot silence can also mean preparation. The night he examined her phone was not an accident. He did not search. He simply picked up what she carelessly left behind. The truth did not explode. It unfolded. Each message he read revealed a plan, a direction, a replacement. Her betrayal did not feel like a mistake. It felt like a project she had been investing in while pretending nothing had changed at home. Her affair was not a spark. It was a strategy. What he discovered in her phone was not a secret. It was a blueprint she never expected him to read. He held the phone as if it were an object that no longer belonged to either of them. Her messages were arranged neatly, each one a thread she believed would remain hidden. He did not tremble while scrolling. He moved calmly, like a man examining receipts after a long journey. Each line revealed a truth she had already lived. The affair was no longer a suspicion. It was an invoice detailing what she had invested in someone else. He spent days collecting evidence without telling her. The silence became his shield. He moved like a man counting coins before closing a business. Bank transactions exposed dinners she never mentioned. Hotel bookings revealed nights she claimed to spend at work. Taxi receipts showed routes that never led home. Each document told a part of the story she thought she controlled. He printed everything, not out of anger, out of precision. There is a difference between reacting and demonstrating. One evening, he placed the printed pages on the table in perfect order. He did not raise his voice. He did not threaten. He simply asked her to sit. She hesitated, sensing danger without knowing its form. The table did not display accusations. It displayed facts. Conversations where she mocked his patience. Plans she made without including him. Compliments she accepted without limits. She stared at her own words, stripped of emotion, incapable of defending them. Her lover did not simply romance her. He borrowed more than affection. He found access to her accounts. He convinced her to transfer money for absurd reasons she could no longer justify. He made promises he never intended to keep. He built fantasies paid for by her dignity. She believed she was valued. In reality, she was funding a performance. Her pride was the currency. Her marriage was the collateral. He remained silent throughout her attempts to speak. Silence weighs more than shouting. Silence removes excuses. It forces reality to stand alone. She tried to explain, but the evidence refuted every sentence. Her voice cracked. Her gestures lost confidence. The truth was not loud. It was undeniable. He was not a man abandoned. He was a man replaced. That realization did not hurt him. It clarified his path. There was one screenshot among the files that shifted everything. It was not explicit. It was not passionate. It was far worse. It was a conversation where her lover laughed about him, not about his mistakes, about his loyalty. He mocked the man she had married. He joked about how easy it was to take what did not belong to him. She replied with emojis and praise. The man she betrayed was no longer simply her husband. He became the punchline of a game he never agreed to play. He realized at that moment that she did not lose herself to another man. She willingly handed over a part of her identity. The screenshot proved she was not stolen. She was traded. The betrayal was not physical. It was existential. Her affair did not destroy trust. It replaced him with someone unworthy. He closed the folder with a calmness she could not understand. He did not accuse her. He did not list her failures. He did not demand explanations. He accepted what the evidence already revealed. The marriage was not damaged. It was concluded. What she thought was hidden had been delivered to him without effort. The truth walked into his hands. There was nothing left to protect. One screenshot changed everything. It showed he was not cheated on. He was replaced. The morning of the appointment felt ordinary to her. She dressed carefully, selecting clothing that suggested calm and control. She rehearsed her arguments as she applied makeup, convinced that with enough charm and emotion, she could negotiate a softer exit. She believed she still held some power. After all, he had been devastated when the truth came out. She assumed a broken man would be predictable. She expected hesitation, tears, perhaps one final plea to repair what she had so casually destroyed. She imagined herself directing the tempo of the meeting. Her confidence was built on memories of who he once was, not on recognition of who he had become. When she entered the lawyer's office, she expected tension, raised voices, maybe resentment. Instead, the air was strangely calm. The walls were lined with shelves of books and framed legal certificates. A large wooden table sat in the center of the room. Her husband was already there. He was seated upright, composed, his hands resting gently on the table as if he had been waiting patiently for someone late to her own breaking point. He greeted her politely, without warmth but without hostility. His tone was civil, almost professional. The absence of emotion unsettled her more than anger ever could. She sat down, ready to speak, expecting to dominate the conversation. Before she could begin, the lawyer placed a thick folder in front of her. She hesitated, thinking it contained accusations or painful details from her affair. She braced herself for guilt traps and emotional leverage. Her eyes scanned the cover, then opened the file, expecting to see her messages printed and highlighted. Instead, she found spreadsheets, stock portfolios, and verified ownership documents. The first page listed properties. The second page listed shares in companies she had never heard of mention. The third page displayed figures far beyond anything she imagined his salary could justify. Each line was clear and precise. These are not recent purchases. These are long-term investments. Her confusion grew as she flipped page after page. She felt as though she had stepped into a version of her husband she never knew existed. While she had been busy enjoying the attention of another man, convinced her husband lacked ambition, he had quietly been building a foundation that could not be shaken. Her lover offered flattery. Her husband built wealth. She stared at numbers she could not comprehend, figures that erased every assumption she ever made about his future without her. Her heartbeat changed rhythm. Control was slipping. The lawyer explained that the assets were already separated legally. Nothing in the file required negotiation. Nothing depended on her consent. He had structured everything before she even asked for a divorce. He had anticipated the day she would choose someone else. He had prepared for it with patience and discipline. Her affair did not break him. It accelerated him. Her betrayal was not his downfall. It became the catalyst for his evolution. While she played with emotions, he mastered outcomes. She tried to interrupt, hoping to regain some footing. She attempted to question the legality of the documents, but the lawyer answered every challenge with confidence and clarity. Every asset was protected. Every decision was documented. The man she believed would crumble under emotional pressure had already risen above it. Her lover had filled her head with fantasies. Her husband filled his life with results. She realized her greatest miscalculation was not infidelity. It was underestimation. She believed she was leaving someone who needed her. She did not see she was leaving someone who had already outgrown her. The more she read, the more she understood that her betrayal had not wounded him. It had freed him. She was divorcing a man who had turned pain into preparation. The folder felt heavier with every page. It carried a truth she could no longer escape. She was not divorcing a broken man. She was divorcing a strategist. The days following the lawyer's meeting carried a strange silence. At first, she mistook it for temporary discomfort. She believed people were processing the news of the divorce. What she did not understand was that the world around her was no longer orbiting her story. It was orbiting his transformation. Something invisible had shifted. Conversations moved differently. Invitations changed tone. Laughter at gatherings no longer included her name. The same friends who once celebrated her charm and praised her independence now chose safer seats at tables where her presence was no longer guaranteed. His behavior contrasted with her unraveling. He did not gossip. He did not seek sympathy. He focused on work, health, and projects he had delayed for years. He walked differently, not with arrogance, but with a quiet certainty that attracted attention. His colleagues noticed the change. His neighbors sensed it. People began asking him for advice, not out of curiosity, but respect. His insights sounded clearer. His vision seemed larger than the pain he had endured. He was becoming someone others admired, not because of revenge, but because of growth. Meanwhile, her social circle, once a fortress of validation, started to crumble. Friends who supported her affair with playful whispers and coded compliments now avoided her questions. They stopped defending her choices. Their smiles became thin. Their eyes looked away when she tried to explain herself. It began subtly. A missed call, a postponed meeting, a forgotten invitation. Then, one by one, messages stopped arriving. She sensed a verdict she had not heard spoken. She was no longer the heroine of her own tale, but the architect of her own downfall. She tried to regain footing, reaching out to the same people who once encouraged her rebellion. Their responses lacked the confidence they once gave her. They had seen something she denied. Her lover did not elevate her. He exposed her weaknesses. Her marriage did not end because she chased passion. It ended because she gambled without understanding the stakes. Her friends were unwilling to be associated with a losing bet. People rarely commit to principles. They commit to direction. His direction now pointed upward. Hers spiraled in confusion. He became a topic of admiration. They whispered about his composure, his discipline, and the surprising strength he displayed when most people would have collapsed. Men respected the way he handled betrayal. Women admired the serenity he carried despite heartbreak. He never raised his voice or sought attention. The more he withdrew from drama, the more noteworthy he became. Silence made him dignified. Distance made him desirable. Improvement made him unforgettable. Her situation grew heavier when she realized even those closest to her were not willing to shield her from the consequences of her choices. She attended a gathering hoping to salvage her image. The atmosphere changed the moment she entered. Conversations paused briefly. Eyes greeted her without warmth. Every smile felt rehearsed. She sensed their judgment more than their presence. She spoke, attempting to explain her version of events, but her words sounded hollow against the reality others had observed. Then came the moment that collapsed her confidence. A friend she considered her defender, the one who once urged her to pursue excitement and independence, pulled her aside. This was someone she trusted, someone who promised support regardless of outcome. The friend spoke quietly, not with anger, but exhaustion. She revealed something that pierced deeper than any accusation. People were not distancing themselves because of the affair alone. They were distancing themselves because they saw her use betrayal as entertainment. They saw her disregard for the man she married. They witnessed how she laughed about him. That laughter became the final stain. The message was simple and irreversible. Her downfall was not created by a mistake. It was created by who she became while making it. Her last line of defense was gone. The friend who once pushed her forward now stepped away, leaving her standing alone in a room filled with people who no longer saw her as misunderstood. They saw her clearly for the first time. His stability had become a compass others wanted to follow. Her chaos had become a warning others refused to repeat. The illusion began to crumble the moment she tried to define their future. For months, she believed she had found something thrilling, something younger and more alive than the marriage she dismissed as routine. Her lover knew exactly how to feed this fantasy. He praised her dissatisfaction and encouraged her rebellion. She mistook validation for affection. She never understood that admiration can be rehearsed and attention can be transactional. He enjoyed the benefits of being with a married woman. There were no commitments, no responsibilities, and no sacrifices. He enjoyed access to her world, a world he did not have to build. She introduced him to places he had only seen from a distance. Restaurants that reserved tables for important guests. Events where her husband used to accompany her. Professional circles where her presence granted him credibility. Every gesture she believed was romantic was actually a strategic move he executed with precision. He asked about her contacts at work. He encouraged her to introduce him to people who could open doors. He insisted she deserved a different life, one where she was appreciated. She thought he admired her strength. He admired her access. Her reputation became his currency. Her excitement financed his ambitions. She believed she was living a love story. He was building a ladder, using her name as a step. The shift arrived on an afternoon when her emotions overpowered her fantasies. She asked if he imagined a future together. She expected a smile, maybe a promise, or even a plan. Instead, he laughed. Not a gentle laugh shared between lovers. It was a laugh that divided the room. A laugh that exposed her as someone who mistook attention for destiny. His voice remained calm, but the words that followed dismantled everything she believed. He reminded her that she was still married. He pointed out that their meetings were exciting because they were temporary. He admitted he enjoyed the thrill, not the commitment. He even hinted that he preferred women who could offer more. She had become predictable. Her usefulness was reaching its expiration date. The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument she had faced in her marriage. She tried to speak, but her voice betrayed her. She asked if their moments meant nothing. He replied that she misunderstood. Moments are not relationships. Access is not love. Affection without responsibility is entertainment. He never lied to her. He simply never promised anything she did not imagine herself. She realized she was not a priority. She was a convenience, a temporary detour in a life he hoped to upgrade with her connections. The humiliation she felt was not a consequence of betrayal, but of misinterpretation. She had gambled her marriage, her reputation, and her dignity on someone who never intended to catch her when she fell. The affair was not a romantic escape. It was a transaction she entered without reading the contract. The price of her fantasy became clear when she understood that she did not lose love. She lost credibility. As he left the room, he did not look back. He did not apologize or explain. There was nothing to justify. He had already taken what he needed. Status, access, visibility. She remained with the ruins of decisions she once celebrated. Her heart did not break because someone betrayed her. It collapsed because someone reminded her she was replaceable. That was the lesson she never expected to learn. Betrayal is painful, but insignificance is fatal. The dinner was planned with a precision she never anticipated. She believed it was an attempt to reconcile, a civil gathering to discuss the divorce with dignity. She arrived dressed in confidence, assuming she could soften the situation with apologies and charm. She did not realize she was stepping into a room where her story no longer belonged to her. Her husband sat at the head of the table. His posture was calm, his eyes steady. He welcomed everyone with the politeness of a host, not with the fragility of a wounded partner. Her parents arrived looking uneasy. Her siblings followed, each carrying expressions that blended curiosity and discomfort. Close friends joined, unsure of the purpose of this gathering. She noticed something strange. The room felt expectant. No one avoided her, yet no one embraced her. She mistook neutrality for forgiveness. When a meal began, her husband spoke without raising his tone. He thanked everyone for attending and explained that transparency was necessary. There would be no accusations, no emotional scenes, no shouting, only truth. A quiet stillness descended on the room. The air changed. She felt it, but could not decipher its meaning. He placed a folder in front of him. Page by page, he presented facts. Not opinions, not interpretations. Evidence. Messages she sent. Financial transfers she made. Lies she told. Times she claimed to be working while she was with someone else. Her betrayal was not described. It was demonstrated. Each detail was delivered calmly, as if he were reading a report, not recounting the collapse of a marriage. No one spoke. No one defended her. The silence was not empty. It was judgment taking shape without a single raised voice. Her sister looked away. Her mother pressed her lips together. Her friends avoided her eyes, unable to align the woman they once admired with the choices she had made. She tried to interrupt, but the lawyer who attended the dinner gently reminded her that every document had been verified. Her husband did not accuse her character. He exposed her actions. He never raised his voice. He never looked triumphant. He appeared liberated. That calmness was more devastating than any emotional reaction she expected. The room did not explode. It shifted. Something intangible moved from her side of the table to his. Respect. It no longer belonged to her. It had migrated. The decisive moment arrived when her father asked a question she could not answer. He looked at her husband, not at her, and asked how long he had been preparing this transition. The room froze. It was the acknowledgement she had never imagined. The man she once dismissed was no longer defined by her betrayal. He was defined by his evolution. Her father's question was not about the affair. It was about the future. It was a declaration that the family now saw her husband differently, not as a victim, but as a leader who transformed pain into clarity. The silence that followed was not awkward. It was final. She entered the dinner believing she could negotiate her image. She left realizing she had lost something far more valuable than a marriage. She lost the room. Respect had changed sides, and it was never coming back. The days after the dinner felt like a storm had passed, but the damage remained. She assumed he would need time before making any final decisions. In her mind, a man who suffered betrayal would cling to negotiations, desperate for answers and emotional reassurances. She still believed she held a fragment of power. She underestimated the value of peace for someone who had already released her emotionally. When he called and asked her to meet at a quiet office downtown, she imagined another confrontation. She rehearsed phrases of remorse, hoping to evoke sympathy. She arrived wearing a practiced expression, prepared to demonstrate regret. Instead, she found him seated calmly beside a minimalist table. No accusations, no tensión, only stillness. The air smelled of something she had lost without noticing. Respect. He slid a document toward her. There was no hostility in his gesture. He explained that everything in that file represented a choice. He did not seek revenge. He sought closure. She opened the folder expecting demands. Instead, she found two distinct options. Both required her signature, but neither offered what she expected. The first option allowed her to keep a significant portion of the marital assets. It required no explanation of her affair, no apology to the family, and no legal pursuit of damages. It was generous, almost disarming. The second option offered less money, but included a public statement acknowledging her role in the separation. There were no humiliating details, only an admission of responsibility. In exchange, she would be free from any financial obligations toward him. It looked fair, even compassionate. Her confusion grew. She searched his face for anger and found none. His voice was measured. A mature man does not fight to win. He fights to be free. This was not a negotiation. It was a final act of self-respect. He created a space where his dignity remained intact regardless of her choice. He had built a life beyond her absence and was now offering her a chance to exit without further destruction. She tried to understand why he gave her such options. He answered before she asked. He wanted the truth settled without dragging years of memories through courtrooms and gossip. He showed her a version of adulthood she never practiced. A version where emotional clarity replaced resentment. This was the moment she realized he was not punishing her. He was closing a chapter she no longer belonged to. Her hands trembled as she reached for a pen. Her pride pushed her toward the second choice, believing she could reclaim her image privately and rebuild her life without consequences. She convinced herself that avoiding financial obligations was a victory. She signed quickly, confident she had outsmarted him one last time. She did not read the final clause carefully. She assumed the smaller print was procedural. She believed her signature was the end of a painful story. Only later did she learn the truth. The clause she ignored transferred something she never intended to give up. Her access to professional networks, shared contacts, and business privileges connected to his investments disappeared the moment she signed. She lost not only financial opportunity, but social credibility. Invitations that once arrived automatically no longer came. Doors she once boasted about entering would never open again. Her lover had abandoned her. Her friends had stepped back. Now the signature she believed protected her independence severed her last remaining bridge. She thought the divorce was the price. She was mistaken. The real cost was hidden in the future she no longer controlled. That document did not destroy her. It revealed her true value. She signed something she did not understand. It cost her more than the marriage ever did. Time has a way of exposing illusions. After the document was signed, she expected to feel liberated. Instead, her days felt heavier. Silence replaced the attention she once demanded. She tried to convince herself that she had chosen freedom. The truth was far different. She did not choose freedom. She was dismissed from a life she assumed she controlled. The shock of her lover's rejection still lingered. The family's disappointment haunted her. Her social circle had evaporated. Her career contacts disappeared like smoke. She spent her nights scrolling through memories, trying to understand when the applause turned into echoes. Her confidence fractured. The world she built on flattery and desire had no foundation. She mistook adrenaline for love and escapism for happiness. Now, she was left with the consequences that only adults understand. The consequences that arrive long after the thrill is gone. She convinced herself that what she needed was closure. She believed all of this could be repaired with a single emotional conversation. She imagined he was still wounded, waiting for her remorse. She thought she could return, speak gently, and reopen the chapter she closed with arrogance. One evening, she appeared at his door without warning. Her makeup softened her features. Her tone rehearsed vulnerability. She spoke of confusion, loneliness, and regret. She cried, hoping tears would melt the barriers she once mocked. He listened without interruption. His expression did not shift. When she tried to touch his hand, he stepped back. She did not face anger. She faced indifference. A man in love reacts. A man who evolved does not. She offered apologies, memories, and promises of change. She spoke of the moments they once shared. She pleaded for one more chance. Every word fell into a space that no longer echoed. She asked if he ever missed her. He answered with a stillness she could not interpret. He explained that love requires vulnerability. Vulnerability had once been his gift. She had turned it into evidence of weakness. The moment she betrayed that trust, the part of him capable of needing her dissolved. She did not lose him the day she cheated. She lost him the day he stopped explaining his worth. Her desperation grew. She tried to provoke any kind of reaction: anger, sadness, regret, anything that would prove she still mattered. His silence was not punishment. It was confirmation. He had no emotional debt left to pay. She represented a closed account, a chapter without a title. She stood in front of a man she once underestimated and saw a stranger who no longer carried her shadow. Finally, exhausted, she asked a question she believed would force honesty. She wanted one certainty in a world that had turned against her. She asked if he ever regretted loving her. For a moment, the room held its breath. His answer did not break her. It erased her. He said he did not regret loving her because she taught him the difference between desire and value. The lesson cost him time, but it saved his future. She left without closing the door behind her. She expected pain. What she felt was emptiness. Her story did not end with dramatic confrontation. It ended with the realization that she was no longer someone he remembered. She did not face rejection. She faced irrelevance. She learned too late that a breakup is not painful when love ends. It is painful when importance ends. His indifference was not cruelty. It was evolution. Her illusions died with his answer. When she walked out of his life, she believed she was leaving behind someone who would crumble. She imagined a man staring at empty walls, replaying what went wrong, drowning in regret. What she failed to understand was that the silence she left behind did not suffocate him. It cleared space. It was the first breath he had taken in years, free from explanations, emotional negotiations, and unearned criticism. For the first time, he was not responsible for carrying someone who refused to grow beside him. He began waking earlier, not because he needed distractions, but because he had rediscovered his own rhythm. He returned to the projects he abandoned when the marriage demanded all his energy. He joined a group dedicated to personal development, where men met not to complain, but to improve. His conversations shifted from emotional survival to financial clarity, health, purpose, and legacy. His phone started ringing with new opportunities. People who once overlooked him now sought his opinion. His transformation did not happen behind closed doors. It unfolded publicly. He changed how he walked, how he dressed, and how he spoke. He was not reinventing himself to be admired. He was becoming the person he should have been long before he sacrificed himself to maintain a relationship that no longer respected him. His colleagues noticed first. His posture carried certainty. His decisions no longer required validation. Meetings that once overwhelmed him now felt like playgrounds where he demonstrated strategic thinking with ease. He upgraded his lifestyle not to impress anyone, but to reflect who he had become. He moved into a new apartment with open windows and sunlight pouring through. He replaced furniture selected to match her taste with pieces that aligned with his identity. Each object in his home represented intention. Nothing existed out of obligation. The result was a living space that felt peaceful rather than performative. As he advanced professionally, people began whispering. They spoke about how calm he appeared after such a betrayal. They admired how he did not retaliate, how he never aired grievances publicly, how he built instead of destroying. The narrative slowly shifted. He was no longer the man whose wife cheated. He became a man who rose above it with dignity. His name, once attached to scandal, became associated with resilience. He met new individuals who recognized his worth without needing a tragic story attached to it. He entered rooms where his past was irrelevant, and his presence was enough. He discovered friendships that did not require emotional sacrifice. He attended dinners where laughter felt genuine, not transactional. He experienced a kind of respect he had never known, not because of what he endured, but because of what he became afterward. Meanwhile, she observed from a distance. At first, she believed his transformation was temporary. She assured herself he was pretending. But each encounter proved otherwise. He looked lighter. He sounded wiser. He seemed untouchable. Her confidence cracked when she overheard people saying that losing her was the best move he ever made. What stunned her most was not the statement itself. It was the fact that no one defended her anymore. The world had shifted its perception without asking her permission. The man she once dismissed as predictable had outgrown her shadow. He was not stronger because she left. He was stronger because he stopped compromising himself to accommodate her stagnation. The greatest upgrade in his life was not a new partner. It was the man he finally became when he stopped carrying someone who refused to walk beside him. People did not pity him. They admired him. And now, she heard it too. Friday arrived without fanfare. There were no storms, no arguments, no scenes that could be mistaken for passion. She entered the courthouse, believing that some extraordinary moment might stop what was coming. In her mind, a final confrontation would take place. She expected emotions to erupt, memories to resurface, and maybe, just maybe, hesitation to appear in his eyes. She believed endings were dramatic because she had built her life around theatrics.